Welcome to the Righteousness and Justice podcast, where I encourage Christians to biblically and critically think through the issues in our society. Here, faith meets truth, and the gospel confronts the world as it is. Here, we proclaim a Christ who died for our sins, was raised on the third day, and causes people to walk in justice, mercy, and truth. In a time of noise, confusion, and compromise, we choose clarity. In a world chasing power, we pursue Christ. Prepare your hearts, open your mind, and stand firm in the call of God, because righteousness and justice are the foundation of his throne. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Righteousness and Justice podcast. I'm your host, Trey. Here at the Righteousness and Justice podcast, I want to encourage Christians to biblically and critically think through the issues of our day. That includes politics, that includes social aspects of our society, and it includes theology. If this is your first time here, please hit that like and subscribe button so that way you can be notified whenever I upload any kind of new content on the channel, whether it be YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. I hope that everybody is having a good week so far. I know that July 4th is coming upon us. In fact, when you watch this, it will be July 4th. But I know many people will be enjoying cookouts and family time and fireworks and things of that nature. So obviously, please be safe. And with that being said, we want to look into a couple of videos. I'm doing something differently than what I typically would do. I'm going to actually be doing a response video to one response video and then to another video that just kind of came out today. Both of them caught my attention because we're dealing with the threat of Christian nationalism. We've been talking about Christian nationalism on this channel in one form or another for a little while. These two videos that I'm going to be responding to really highlight different aspects of Christian nationalism and ways in which Christian nationalism works. The first video that we're going to look at is from a pastor named Josh Howerton. I think he's interviewing a person named Tim Burton. They're actually responding to a Katie Couric video. I want to respond to their response because within their video, there's a few things that stand out to me. One is some of the cognitive dissonance that you see people who are either Christian nationalists or people who are sympathizers of Christian nationalism employ in order to justify being Christian nationalists. We're going to see that in this video. Another thing you're going to see in that video is going to see the attempts to loosely use Christian language or Christian references to make claims such as America was founded as a Christian nation, or that America is a Christian nation. So we want to look at that. And the second one is coming from a guy named Dale Partridge, who is a staunch Christian nationalist and probably on like the worst spectrum of Christian nationalism. Within his videos, we're going to see how within Christian nationalist movement, there is racism baked into it and also a whitewashing of history as well. We're going to go through. I don't have anything really prepared for it. So we're just going to watch the videos. I'm going to respond to the videos in real time and then we'll see how this goes. All right. I'm looking forward. Please, if you have any comments, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to put those in the chat. But this conversation is really built around the threat of Christian nationalism, how it works, why we claim it as a threat. I mean those of us who are Christian content creators who have been calling it out for a while now, who see the threat not only to the country when it comes to democracy, but also to the church when it comes to our witness to the rest of the world. Let's go ahead and look at this very first video. This one is again from Josh Howerton and his conversation with Tim Burton.
I want you to respond to something that went crazy viral. So Katie Couric had this is like exactly the perfect encapsulation of what I grew up high school and college hearing and feeling.
I would love to get your take on the rise of Christian nationalism in this country and around the world.
Talking
The
to
University
Professor.
of Massachusetts at Amherst recently released a poll that shows how Americans are feeling with the 250th anniversary of our country.
That's this week.
And
Happy birthday.
there's a huge divide between Democrats and Republicans on the extent to which the U.S. should be a Christian country. Nearly 80% of Republicans believe the U.S. was founded as a Christian nation.
Correct.
72%.
So you notice Tim Burton immediately yells correct to the assertion that America was founded as a Christian nation, right? So we understand again what the direction of this video is going into.
Percent believe the government should advocate Christian values.
Correct.
54% believe the U.S. should be declared a Christian nation. And I thought this was really disturbing.
It's very disturbing. It's very disturbing.
Another
Christian
Public
ideas are so
Religion
disturbing.
Research Institute poll found that 56% of Republicans qualify as either adherents or sympathizers of Christian nationalism.
For people who are listening, whenever you hear the phrase Christian nationalism, that is 99.9% of the time, it's a scare label that's intentionally designed to stigmatize Christians advocating for their values in the public square.
All right, so let's stop here because this is one of the claims that we need to address here. Because one of the things that you'll find within people who are either Christian nationalists or people who are sympathizers of Christian nationalism is an attempt to minimize what Christian nationalism actually is. In fact, sometimes I'll even get this in some of my comments where somebody will say, "Oh, Christian nationalism is just a made up word. Um, Christian nationalism isn't that big of a deal." All the things like they essentially it's kind of what you get when you have the conversation about racism, where people will try to make um, racism a an issue that doesn't really matter, that doesn't really affect our society and our communities, and so you get kind of the same line of argument when it comes to Christian nationalism from people who are again either subscribers or sympathizers to that movement, where they attempt to minimize it. Here, Josh Howerton attempts to say that 99.9% of the time, when people are using the term Christian nationalism, they're trying to essentially silence conservatives or Christians from voicing their Christian opinion in the public square. And that's just completely wrong. I'm a Christian, right? I love the Lord. I've been a Christian since I was 16. I'm 44 now. I also am a Christian who participates in discussion in the public square. When I'm talking about Christian nationalism, I'm not talking about Christians who want to voice their opinion in the public square. I'm not even talking about conservatives who want to voice their opinions in the public square. We're going to get into who I'm really talking about a little bit later as he continues to flesh this out. But I want y'all to really pay attention to that. This is an attempt to minimize what Christian nationalism is, or an attempt to kind of generalize what those of us who are critics of Christian nationalism might be talking about.
I'll just shoot you really straight. If you put in front of me, and hey man, your two options are atheistic globalism, like woke secular paganism, or Christian nationalism, I'm going to go, well, heck yes, I'm that one. 99% of the time.
All right. So again, it's very interesting too that when I hear people talk about globalism within conservative Christian circles, I don't know where this comes from, but globalism is often cast or characterized as either sinful, from the devil. Here he calls it atheistic or woke or something like that. I don't really understand where that comes from because the Bible doesn't really adhere or really doesn't vouch for a system when it comes to like a political system. It doesn't really vouch for an economic system, right? It really vouches that for whatever economic system that you're using, that those who have more should be making sure that they're providing and taking care of those who have less, that there should not be exploitation, right? That there should not be corruption, that there should not be, that the powerful should not be abusing their power. Like that's really what the Bible is after. So the way that they characterize this is very interesting. And he's also going to do a comparison to say, well, hey, if you gave me the choice of an atheistic globalism and then Christian nationalism, that's going to be me all day. That's what we call a false equivalency or bad comparison, really. Right. That those are not the choices that we have before us. It is not you either choose an atheistic globalism or you choose Christian nationalism. Right. As Christians, what we have is the teachings of Jesus Christ. What are the teachings of Jesus Christ? Love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And the second one is, like he said, love your neighbor as yourself, right? Whatever we're doing politically, socially, theologically, in our community, whatever, really needs to be centered on those two commands: loving God with all our heart, soul, and mind, and loving our neighbor as ourselves. So that's really the choice that you have. It's not this, I want, no, do you want to be a woke globalist or do you want to be a Christian nationalist? Those are not the same things. And those are not the choices.
Christian nationalism is a scare label. It non-verbally says, I, as a secular person, am allowed to advocate for my values in the public square, but you, as a Christian, are not allowed to advocate for your values in the public square, because that's scary Christian nationalism. If somebody goes, hey, Josh, you're a Christian nationalist, I'm like, well, I'm a Christian and I love my nation. If that makes me a Christian nationalist, okay, well, I don't care, whatever.
So that doesn't make you a Christian nationalist, right? Being a Christian and someone who loves your country does not make you a Christian nationalist. Once again, this is one of those tactics that you will see with people who are either Christian nationalists themselves or who are people who sympathize with Christian nationalist movements, where again they will say, "Well, I'm a Christian, I love my nation. If that's a Christian nationalist, then that's what I'm going to go for." But that's actually not what a Christian nationalist is. If I can just go and just show you something real quick. Here's what a Christian nationalist is. The Kettering Foundation defines Christian nationalism, and I've done this from in one of my other podcast episodes, as an ideology that desires a close fusion of a particular expression of Christianity within American civic life. It demands our government at all levels vigorously defend this ideology as central to our national identity, public policy, and social belonging. This has nothing to do with you being a Christian who just wants to, love your country. Be a Christian who loves your country all day long. I'm a Christian and I love my country as well, but that doesn't mean I don't get to critique it, right? Christian nationalism is very different than just loving your country. Christian nationalism is really a bleeding or a merging of Christian language and symbols with political power for the sole purpose of gaining superiority. When I and many other people are talking about a Christian nationalism, here's what we're talking about. We're talking about people like Doug Wilson, right? Doug Wilson, who is the Secretary of War's pastor, or at least they're in the same network. Peter Hesketh has brought him to the Pentagon to speak and pray multiple times. Now, we're talking about people like Stephen Wolfe, who is the author of The Case for Christian Nationalism. He argues that that Christian nationalism's ideals should be implemented in our government. Or we're talking about people like Erica Kirk, who everybody knows from Turning Point USA, or people like Willie Rice is his name. So Willie Rice is who this is. This is the newly elected Southern Baptist Convention president who has Christian nationalist ties. Or we're talking about Joel Webbon, who is famous or infamous, especially over the last few years, where he's made lots of very racist and sexist comments, but extremely racist comments, even to the point where he's said that all black Christians should come under white pastors so they can be discipled. It's actually pretty wild. Or even this is Salve, who is shares a podcast platform with Joe Webbon, and makes equally racist comments and tries to blend those with Christian thoughts and Christian words. Then you have Del Partridge. Del Partridge is someone who, if you haven't heard of him, he is a very influential person within the Christian nationalist movement, and he makes content quite a bit, and his content is very inflammatory. His content is very racist. His content really shows you the aims of Christian nationalism. So when Josh Howerton says that, oh, when the time when people are talking about Christian nationalists, they're just talking about Christians who want to state their opinion in the public square. That's completely wrong. We're talking about people like this. Let me play something for you from Dale Partridge, so that way you kind of understand what we're getting at here. So this one here, I had to let me go to my save so we can see it. Check this out.
Founded by absolute.
Starts over.
Why is America so great? Because it was founded by absolute madmen of iron conviction. I'm talking about fanatics so possessed by Christ that they hurled themselves across the Atlantic in wooden death traps with no engines, no guarantees, and no turning back. And those who couldn't hack it, they drowned, they starved, they were buried at sea. The survivors, they hit the shore like a hammer. They carved a civilization out of pure wilderness. Then more boats came. And those who couldn't make it, they rotted on the docks and they crawled back to Europe. The colonists who did make it, they rose up, they waged an entire war against the most powerful empire the world has ever known, and then they broke its spine. The strongest families pushed west like a firestorm, and they're building cities out of nothing, choking grizzly bears to death with their bare hands, and they're slaughtering savages by the thousands, and conquering every inch of untamed hellscape this continent could throw at them. And the unfit, they died again. And I point that out because America purged out weak bloodlines. And for nearly 250 years, America forged the hard.
All right, so there's a couple of things already that are problematic in this, right? He's talked about how the weak couldn't make it and crawled back to Europe. He's talked about the fit or those who were not fit dying, and now he's literally talking about. Oh, he's talked about the colonists coming through and carving out civilization in wildernesses as if there was no one there. And then he makes mention, and there's also pictures of that he puts up of women with axes, and he says they slaughtered the savages. Like the language that he's using here, it has a few things to it. One, it has it's excusing genocide, right? Essentially, what Europeans did to the indigenous people of this country, and then it also frames people who died or people who went back to Europe as being the weak ones. And he's making a genetic and a cultural argument here. We're going to keep watching and hear what he has to say, but it's I want you to hear some of the language that he's using also.
civilization. So if you're a heritage American, this is where you come from.
I'm gonna back that up so you can hear that one more time.
Christian nation in human history.
Here we go.
Bloodlines. And for nearly 250 years, America forged the hardest, toughest, brightest, richest, most fiercely Christian nation in human history.
So we have that claim again that again this is a Christian nation, and please focus on like who he is showing, like the type of people he's showing here.
Human history, it was the undisputed pinnacle of Western civilization. So if you're a heritage American, this is where you come from.
Very important, a heritage American. Okay, heritage American. So far, he has only shown images of white men and women, and he's called them colonists. He's called them the fittest. He's called them the strongest. He has said that essentially this journey has weeded out weak people out of the bloodline. So he's using bloodlines. And now he's saying, heritage Americans, this is where you come from. And I want you to see who he's talking to because he's not talking to those of us who are of African descent. He's not talking to you all who are of Mexican or Central American or South American descent. He's not talking to any of you who are of any Asian descent. He's talking to specific people. Here, he's going to say exactly who those people are.
The absolute best, boldest, most dominant European stock ever to walk the earth. Those were your forefathers. And
There you go. So the boldest and most dominant European stock. Those were your forefathers, is what Dale Partridge says. This is a Christian nationalist. These are the type of people that we're talking about when we are proclaiming that Christian nationalism is the biggest threat to the United States and to the American church. It's not just because they have bad doctrine. They have bad doctrine, absolutely. But that doctrine is infused with the racism that has affected or infected this country since its inception. It's infused with the sexism that has infected this country since its inception, and it rewrite and whitewash history. Let's keep going.
those were your forefathers and foremothers. And now, at our 250th anniversary, we stand at this cliff. And if we don't return to Christ, if we don't restore raw biblical national order, and if we don't violently reject the demonic cancers of feminism or mass immigration or parasitic foreign interests.
Once again, he's using Christian language to say that, hey, this is what we, and by we, he's talking about white people in America, have inherited from their quote unquote Christian ancestors. And that if they don't violently fight, and they don't violently fight against the ideologies or even the things that he's talked about, so feminism, mass immigration, and foreign interests, then here's what he says will happen.
We're going to be the last generation to ever taste the glory of America. This is it. If you want to save America, now is the time. And by God, we will have our home again.
And by God, we will have our home again. Isn't that interesting? So, again, when we talk about Josh Howerton's video, when he claims that 99% of the time that people are talking about Christian nationalism, they're just talking about conservatives who want to uh, tell their opinion or sprout their opinion in the public square. That's not who we're talking about, right? This country has long allowed conservatives, liberals, progressives, Christians, and non Christians alike to take part in public discourse. We're talking about something very particular in this country called Christian nationalism that weaponizes racism and sexism, that grabs a hold of power and attempts to legislate a cultural dominance on everyone who is not descendants of European, that wants to literally prop up white superiority and white nationalism as normative. And this is really a bastardization of the gospel. It attempts to use the Bible, much like their ancestors who did the same thing when it came to the doctrine of discovery, where they could go out there and just, essentially conquer lands in God's name, much like their ancestors did when it came to justifying slavery, much like their ancestors did when it came to justifying Jim Crow laws, and denying women their rights to vote and take part in the public discourse. It's this very same tactic. These are who we're talking about. We're not talking about those of you who just want to, again, participate in public discussions. We're talking about these types of folks. We're going to get back to this Josh Howerton video, and see some more things that Christian nationalism attempts to use, um, whenever it's making its case.
So this is what she's saying here. I want you to know the play that's being run on you.
Yeah.
People stigmatize to divide is what. So let's stigmatize the phrase so that we can keep you from advocating for your values in the public square. Which
He said that as if he did not just refer to wokeness earlier, which is a stigmatization that they attempt to use on people who disagree with them. And so the very same quote unquote tactic that he's trying to alert his listeners to, he actually engages in himself. That's that's one of those nose deaf conversations that when you are steeped into any ideology, you typically become blind to your own failings because you're so focused on what you would consider the failings of other people.
Which, by the way, we're just going, well, God's commands are not burdensome. That's actually what's good for people,
Right.
societies. So we want that stuff.
What's going on here?
You also can't do democracy without history. So those views that people hold, some of them are views about the past, and they're wrong. The United States was not, in fact, founded on Christian principles in any sense. It's simply not true.
So in 1813,
Well, we're going right into it. Let's go.
yeah,
Okay.
so John Adams writes Thomas Jefferson a letter.
Yeah.
First vice president, second president, one of the most significant. In fact, 250 years that we're celebrating. He's the guy responsible for so much of it. His fingerprints are on almost everything in the American founding. The letter's like 4.5 pages. I just pulled one sentence from it. He says the general principles upon which the fathers achieved independence were the general principles of Christianity.
Now, they really think that this is a mic drop. But here's why it's not the mic drop that they think it is. I'm going to pull up my slides one more time so you can see this here, right? Here's what Jesus says when he is talking to the Pharisees, and he is talking out or calling out their hypocrisy. He quotes Isaiah. He says, "This people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. They worship me in vain, teachings as doctrines, human commands." Just because, this is very important, just because someone says that they're Christian, just because somebody uses Christian language, just because somebody does something that appears to be Christian does not make it Christian. Okay, so you prayed. In fact, there's actually an image that Tim Burton uses um, later on in this conversation where he uses this. This is the first prayer or the prayer at the first continental. I'm forgetting the entire thing, but essentially, it's one of the meeting, the first meeting that they're having. Um, and they are praying. This picture is essentially supposed to be depicting them praying, and it was supposed to have been a very energetic and transformative prayer, right? And so here they are doing the prayer, and he uses this as an example. So they say, "See, this is America being formed as a Christian nation." However, those same people who did all that praying, who apparently received divine wisdom from that prayer, still went on to enslave people, right? Still went on to support an institution that led to the murder of enslaved individuals, that led to the SA of enslaved individuals, that led to the maiming and injuring of enslaved individuals, that led to the dehumanization of enslaved individuals, right? These are the same men after they prayed. Apparently, God didn't tell them, you need to make things right with the indigenous peoples of this land whose land you've stolen, right? They had this uh, amazing experience in prayer. And yet, coming out of that amazing experience in prayer, they did not address the wrongs that they were doing simultaneously. And what this really exposes is the hypocrisy that is built into Christian nationalism and also the whitewashing of history that's built into Christian nationalism. At the very same time that we have pastors and politicians who are claiming the name of God and who are claiming to be Christian and who are claiming to represent Christ, they're also supporting things that go against Christ. They're passing legislation that harms the poor. They're characterizing immigrants as criminals and as the worst of all people. They're actually characterizing immigrants as a horde that is invading the United States, or that Haitians were eating people's pets and geese and things of that nature. All these things are antithetical to the teachings of Jesus Christ, right? And in the Old Testament, when God is even laying out the law, part of the law is that we are to welcome the foreigner, that we are to provide for the foreigner, right? Jesus taught us that we're supposed to care for the poor, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, care for the orphan, care for the widow, stand up for the oppressed, take care of the least of these. When your policies, when your theologies, when your posture doesn't allow you to do that, but encourages you to demonize people who may find themselves in those situations, then your theology isn't based on Jesus Christ. Your theology is based on your political persuasion. Your theology is based on your cultural persuasion, but it's not built on Jesus Christ. When we talk about Christian nationalism and the threat of it, it's because of this. It fuses Christian language with power, but the purpose isn't to elevate and raise Jesus up for the masses. Really, the purpose is for cultural, racial, and political dominance over everyone else. You heard Del Partridge talk about heritage Americans, and you saw that he's referring to white Americans, no one else. He's telling them they need to fight and get their country back. That's what we're really up against here. And even here, where we see an example of trying to reference and recast individuals as being Christian and being led by God to do certain things, yet not acknowledging the fact that those same men have gone on to do some of the most heinous things, or if they weren't participants of it, they were complicit in some of the most heinous times of this country's life. We can't forget that. And we can't forget that Christian nationalism really affects the witness of the church. For those of us who are living in 2026, who are really wanting to do what Jesus commanded us to do, which is go out and make disciples, we need to understand that Christian nationalism makes it more difficult because people have questions. People want to know, how is it that God can condone this? And we have to say loudly, God does not condone this, right? There's so many people, people like, some of the videos that we're watching here, they have large platforms and they're reaching hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people every single week. Our churches, or people who attend our churches, are being discipled in some ways by this type of theology. And this type of theology, rather than producing Jesus like Christians, is more producing Christians who operate in fear, Christians who operate in cruelty, Christians who operate in tribalism, and who try to justify it by nitpicking or cherry picking the word of God for their own purposes. So I hope that this has been clear for everybody. I hope this has been helpful for everybody. And I hope once again that you all enjoy your Fourth of July. But let's not enjoy our Fourth of July with unclear minds and with whitewashed history on our hearts. Let's actually enjoy our Fourth of July with truth, understanding that while we love the country, it's not without its faults, and we have to acknowledge those faults. And while I love my brothers and my sisters who share the name of Jesus, that when they get off on their theology, when they're supporting things that they should not be supporting, when they're representing Jesus outside of his character, then we need to call them call them back into right belief, into right representation. All right. So with that being said, listen, I'm gonna let y'all go. Enjoy the rest of your Fourth of July. Enjoy your families. Again, stay safe out here while you guys are doing this fireworks. We don't want anybody to be hurt. All right. Take care.